Today we have one invited speaker, namely Dr. Suparna Sen from University of Kolkata. Her research area is basically harmonic analysis, and she focuses mainly on Lie groups. And today she is going to talk on around theorems of Ingham, Paley, Wiener, Levinson, and Bjorling regarding decay of Fourier transforms. So, Professor Sen, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for your kind introduction. And firstly, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to give this survey talk. And also kudos to them that they have organized such a nice conference at such a big scale. So thanks a lot for this too. So I would like to state in the beginning that my talk is going to be very much at the basic level. So if there are any experts, my apologies to them. So since this is going to be a survey talk, I would like to pitch it at very basic, starting from very basic. I will not talk too much about technicalities. I'll just mention which result has been done. So yeah, as you've seen in the title, it's going to be on these classical theorems of Ingham, Paley, Wiener, Levinson, and Bjorling regarding decay of Fourier transform. So let me first start with the definition of Fourier transform. Okay, so for a L1 function, as all of you know, that the Fourier transform is defined in this way. And also, if f hat is also in L1, then we can also get back the function from the Fourier transform in a similar way by the inversion formula. So we all know this, and this sort of gives a duality between the function and the Fourier transform for all groups, etc. On Rn we have this property. Now this will be used very much in our versions of uncertainty principle. Now what is an uncertainty principle? An uncertainty principle is in general can be described as a result which tells you that a function and a Fourier transform cannot both simultaneously be small. Now, what is small? You can define several notions of smallness. So one wants to optimize that to get a result of uncertainty principle. Okay. So, for example, one notion of smallness can be some decay at infinity. You can impose some decay on either the function or the Fourier transform at infinity. How rapidly is the question? That is what we want to know. And for example, on the other, you can impose some vanishing condition. Okay. So on how large a set, again, that is subjective. Okay. So let me start with a very elementary uncertainty principle. Okay. So let's start with the function f in L1R. And let us assume that its Fourier transform has a decay of this form, that its modulus is bounded by some constant times e to the power minus a mod psi for some positive number a. Now, notice that this already imposes a L1 condition on f hat. Okay, so we know the inversion holds. Now, in the inversion formula, instead of x, if you put x plus iy, we can see that this formula is actually, this quantity is actually finite when you have if the Fourier transform satisfies this estimate, if you have mod y to be less than a. Okay, and for all. And and using Morera's theorem, you can get that this f actually extends as a holomorphic function to this strip. So where this strip of mod y less than a, which contains a real line. Okay. Now, since f is a holomorphic function, so of course it cannot vanish on any large set. So it cannot vanish in particular on even a set of positive Lebesgue measure. Okay. So even if it vanishes on a set of positive Lebesgue measure, we know that f will have to be 0 because it's a holomorphic function. So this can be considered as a very elementary form of an uncertainty principle. Now the question that was asked is, what if we replace this a mod psi by a function? Okay. So we want to replace this a mod psi by another function. So we consider some general locally integrable function psi, say on non-negative real numbers, which also takes non-negative values. And we want to ask whether there exists a non-zero f in L1 vanishing probably on a set of positive Lebesgue measures such that Fhat satisfies this condition. So we are replacing this condition, this A mod psi, by a general function psi, okay, and in this estimate, and we are asking whether F can vanish on a set of positive Lebesgue measure, or maybe other sets like open sets and all. That is what so the classical theorems I'll describe at first. So I'll describe the classical theorems of Ingham, Pelley-Wiener and Levinson on R. These were done around in the 1930s. So I will describe it in a unified sort of way, okay? In a describe them in together in one place. So we consider a psi, again a locally integrable function, and we consider this integral. This integral will be important, okay? So I call this integral I equal to 1 to infinity psi over xi square, okay? So remember this integral. And we will consider a function f in LP. So we can define the Fourier transform of L1 functions, and yeah, this is standard theory. We can also define the Fourier transform of LP functions between 1 and 2. So for those functions, we assume, for that Fourier transform, we assume this dk for almost every xi with this psi. Now, so first I'll state the result of Pelley-Wiener because I would like to state Ingham and Levinson together. So Pelley-Wiener's result says that if such a function f vanishes on a half line, so on one side of a point x naught in R, and this integral is infinite, then we can prove that f is 0. Okay, Pelley-Wiener proved this. And also the converse is true. If this integral is finite, then actually there exists a non-zero f in L2. So one can construct a non-zero f such that which vanishes on a half line like this, and also which satisfies this estimate. Okay. So Pelley-Wiener proved this. I will go into what was used in the proof and all after stating the theorems. Okay. So let me state the theorems first. So this is Pelley-Wiener's result. And so here, note that Pelley-Wiener did not use any extra condition on psi. For them, psi was just a locally integrable function. Ingham and Levinson both imposed some extra conditions on psi. So Ingham actually took psi of the form like this. Psi is like theta into xi, where theta xi into xi, where theta is actually a decreasing function which goes to 0 at infinity. Okay, so Ingham took a function psi like this and proved a similar result, but he proved actually what the version which I'm stating here is not exactly what occur in the original papers. These are versions which can be easily derived from the original papers. Okay, for example, Ingham's result also, when he stated in his original paper, it was for a compactly supported function. But using his techniques, whatever he used, and a simple convolution argument, one can easily get this much stronger version. The stronger version is this, that if f vanishes on a non-empty open set in R on any open interval, say, and the integral is infinite, integral that I described, then f is 0. And conversely, if the integral is finite, then given any positive number, so this positive number is anything. So you can actually construct a function compactly supported in any interval minus AA. So since this A is general, you can take this support to be as small or as big as you want, okay, satisfying the decay condition. So this is Ingham's result, and in Levinson's result also the conclusion is similar, okay, but the condition on psi is different. Psi is an increasing function here, and the conclusion is similar again, that if f vanishes on a non-empty open set and the integral is finite, f is 0, and conversely again, if the integral is infinite here, I mean, and conversely, if the integral is finite, then one can construct such a compactly supported continuous function supported on any interval like this, and satisfying such that the Fourier transform satisfies this estimate. Now, these are the classical results. So, by Ingham, Pelley-Wiener, and Levinson. Now, I would like to state the classical result by Boiling. What Boiling did was, Boiling actually generalized Levinson's result. Okay, so and he did it for a measure. So for a complex measure also, you can define the Fourier transform in a similar way. And then we have this result that if psi is an increasing function satisfying this integral to be finite, and mu is a complex measure which satisfies such a condition. Now note that this condition is the L1 version of the condition we had on f hat. So here, if you look at the condition on f hat, so if you take e to the power psi this side, f hat e to the power psi, so has a sort of L infinity condition here. Okay, so instead of that, instead of f hat, we are assuming, Boiling is assuming that it's for a measure, and he's giving the vanishing condition on the Fourier transform side. Okay, so here e to the power psi with respect to measure satisfies a sort of L1 condition. Then if you assume that the Fourier transform vanishes on a set such that here, yeah, this is a bit more general than again what Boiling originally stated. Sorry. So here we can actually say that if this mu hat vanishes on a set capital lambda, where capital lambda closure is a set of positive measures. So as you can very well understand, this also includes sets of zero Lebesgue measure. So if capital lambda is a set of zero Lebesgue measure, but its closure is a set of positive Lebesgue measure, even that will do. This is actually very easy to see because mu hat is continuous. So if mu hat vanishes on lambda, it has to vanish on lambda closure. So that will give it. So there's nothing much difficult in that, but it actually generalizes this a lot. So then also you can conclude that mu is 0. So note that Boiling's result is much more general from Levinson's. So it's a direct generalization that can be told, because Levinson's, he had assumed that the function vanishes on a set of on an open set, whereas here we are talking about a set of positive Lebesgue measure, and that to its closure is of positive Lebesgue measure. Okay. So these were the classical results. I'll first give, yeah, I'll keep on giving references in between so that it's easier to follow. So Pelley-Wiener's result actually appeared in this paper and also in his book, this famous book. And Inham's result appeared in this paper. So these are all, as you can see, the dates 33, 34. And Levinson's result appeared in this paper, as well as it also appears in his book. Hello? Is there a problem?
Excuse me, who is that? Please mute yourself.
Acha. Okay. Okay. So Levinson's results appeared here, and Boiling's, actually we could not find the original paper. We could only find this book where his result is there. It is also contained in Cousis's book. Cousis is a very nice book called Logarithmic Integrals. I'll come to that book later in my talk. Okay, so these are the original references of these classical results on R, which we have talked about. Okay. Now let's go to yeah. So I'll just say something about the proofs. So what Inham used basic ingredients of the proofs. Okay. So what Inham used was so there's this concept of quasi-analytic functions, and there's this classical Deng-Joa-Carleman theorem which characterizes quasi-analytic functions. So Inham basically used this to prove his result. Okay. Now this theme of quasi-analyticity actually occurs recurringly in all these results. I'll tell you how. So Inham directly used this Deng-Joa-Carleman theorem. What Pelley-Wiener did was they used some complex analytic techniques. So because they assumed functions vanishing on one half line. So you know, if a function vanishes on a half line, its Fourier transform will have an holomorphic extension to half space. So they used that holomorphic extension and used some complex analytic techniques. But here, what is interesting in terms of quasi-analyticity is that in their book also, they have referred to this result, which is of an uncertainty principle, I should say. It's in a different form in their book, and what I've stated is in an equivalent form. But they have called it the fundamental theorem of quasi-analyticity, and they have used it to actually prove again Deng-Joa-Carleman theorem. Okay. So yeah, what they've mentioned is that for Deng-Joa-Carleman theorem, because it characterizes quasi-analyticity, so these functions, which are essentially non-zero functions but vanishing on a half line, these are essentially non-quasi-analytic functions. Okay. So in that way they have connected. So next is Levinson. What Levinson did was, Levinson took functions in L1R and used a certain transformation to convert them into functions which vanish on a half line, and then he applied Pelivinus result. Now the problem with this is, problem while generalizing this to Rn is that this technique is very difficult to generalize in Rn. So there's an alternative proof of Levinson's theorem available in Cousis's book, for example. So which is this thing will be very important again in the later part of my talk also after this, that using some completeness of exponentials in certain non-linear space of continuous functions, using this density of this exponential type of function in this space, we can prove Levinson's result. Okay, so this actually was used in proving Rn, the analog on Rn. I'll come to that later. So the last is Boyling's theorem. What he used was, he used some contour integrals and a result called the theorem on two constants, and he involved harmonic measure into the picture. Okay, so this theorem on two constants is basically a kind of fragment Lindelof type result involving harmonic measure. So using this concept of harmonic measure, he could generalize this vanishing type set match into a set of positive Lebesgue measure. Now here also, how is it related to quasi-analyticity? Boiling also in his original, in his book, for example, we have seen he has used these concepts to prove a result regarding quasi-analyticity, but his quasi-analyticity is a little different from Denjoy-Carlemann's sense of quasi-analyticity. So his is more general than this. So he defines a notion of quasi-analyticity and uses and actually proves a result on that and this uncertainty principle type result comes as a corollary of that quasi-analyticity result in his paper. But the methods used are this, and so it is directly proved in Cousis's book. Okay, so using this. So let me give the okay. So no, before giving the references, I'll just like to speak a bit about this problem, because this is a separate problem of interest of completeness of exponentials. So this is called weighted approximation result of exponentials. I'll call it WAP in general. So whenever I refer to this, so let us assume that psi is an increasing function, and we assume that it blows up at infinity. Okay, it goes to infinity at x goes to infinity. Now we consider this space of continuous functions on Rn. This is my notation for continuous functions, and this is C psi, where f by e to the power psi, this quantity goes to 0 at infinity. And we can define a norm here as a supremum norm. So as you can realize, it is like a weighted space of C0. C0 is continuous functions vanishing at infinity. So with a weight here, modulo this weight, it is like C0. So in fact, this is isometrically isomorphic to C0. And the norm is also given in this way with the supremum norm. Now what we do is, we consider any subset of Rn, and we consider the span of the exponentials, where this lambda is coming from this capital lambda set, and exponentials are of course these functions. E lambda x is defined by e to the power minus I lambda x here. So we consider, we define phi lambda to be the span of all these E lambdas, where lambda is coming from this capital lambda. Now what is this weighted approximation problem? It asks this question, that for which subsets capital lambda is this space phi lambda dense in the given space C psi. You can assume some more conditions on psi if you want. For example, you can the integral condition which I have already mentioned, that you can assume the integral to be infinite and all that. So for that, when does this set phi lambda become dense in C psi? Okay, so this sort of problems constitute weighted approximation problem. There are also various other versions. I'm just talking about one version here. So this is related to that problem. That's why I mentioned here. And I'll now state the references, and we'll come back to this later and how it was used and all later. So yeah, a very nice introduction to quasi-analytic functions and range of element theorem is available here. Rudin's real and complex analysis, and it is also a simple proof is also available in Cohen's paper. And this is Cousis's book I was talking about. This contains this exponential density result, exponential density way of proving Levinson's theorem, as well as Boyling's theorem, and all these things. So, and this exponential density kind of result, if anyone is interested in, there are some references here. This paper by Digiu and this by Poltorowski. So one can look at this if one is interested in this kind of a problem. Okay. So now let me go to the versions on Rn. Now, so in order to prove the versions on Rn, what we do is we consider a psi function again from 0 infinity to 0 infinity, and again consider this integral. And again here we consider some f in LP with p between 1 and 2. And here the general version which have been proved now is for f hat e to the power psi to have a LQ type of estimate. Remember we had talked about L infinity kind of estimate and L1 kind of estimate. This actually can satisfy a LQ type of estimate with q between 1 infinity and also, and n is any positive real number, and also for q equal to infinity. So this was the first version that was proved, and later this was generalized to any q. So for q equal to infinity, this condition looks like this. Okay, so f at e to the power psi by some polynomial is in L infinity, that sort of a condition. Okay, so for p, where p is any polynomial. So if you assume such a condition on f and f at, okay, so then we have Pelley-Wiener, Levinson, and Inham's result. So Pelley-Wiener's result, what we assume is that f is supported in a half space, so on one side of a hyperplane. Okay, so if f is supported instead of a half line, we assume that it is supported in a half space. Then if I is infinity, then f is 0. That is the result. I'm stating the one side of the result first. Converse, I can state it together. Inham's result again of a similar type. Psi is taken to be of this type at theta into xi, where theta is a decreasing function going to 0 as I going to infinity. Then again, if f vanishes on non-empty open set, then the integral is infinite, then f is 0. And again, Pelley-Wiener's Levinson's result is also for psi increasing, and f vanishes on a non-empty open set, and I infinity, then f is 0. So these were the generalizations done for Rn. And the converse for all of this is also true. So if I is finite, one can actually construct and given any positive a. So there we had an interval minus AA, and here we have a ball. So this is my notation for a ball centered at the origin of radius a. Now one can actually construct a function in CC infinity supported in this ball, as small or as big as you want, satisfying these estimates to this estimate 2 if q is between 1 and infinity and not including infinity, and this estimate if q is equal to infinity. Okay, so let me mention, for Inham's you have to assume that size of this type. For Levinson also you have to assume size of increasing type of Levinson type, and for Pelley-Wiener you can assume either of these. Okay, so either size of the Inham type or of the Levinson type, then the same result actually works as a converse. So because once it's compactly supported, of course it vanishes on a non-empty open set as in Inham or Levinson, or it vanishes on a half space as in Pelley-Wiener. Okay, so this is the version of Inham, Pelley-Wiener, and Levinson's theorem on Rn. And we also have a version of Boyling's theorem on Rn. So for that, we first need a definition. So for the definition, we first note that we would define a set of positive rectangle type. So so first we note that an open set U inside Rn, this will always contain a set of this product form. Okay, so any open set, inside any open set, you can find such a product of open sets, U1 cross U2 cross Qn. Okay, where each of these is open in R. And this is actually an important tool while using, actually Levinson's result on Rn was proved by this exponential density result, and for extending the exponential density result from R to Rn, this is an important tool. And Boiling is also proved by the same technique. But unfortunately, this is not true for sets of positive Lebesgue measure. Okay, so if you take a set, you say, of positive Lebesgue measure inside Rn, you may not have a product set of this type. An easy example is, if you suppose in R2, if you take unit square and if you take out the rational diagonals, then that will give you a set of positive measure which does not have a product set of this type. So we have to incorporate this into the definition so that this method works. So that is the reason why we define capital lambda to be inside Rn to be a set of positive rectangle type if there exists lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda n inside R, such that their product is inside this capital lambda. Okay, and here, as we have seen in Boyle's theorem, we can assume that this each lambda j closure has positive Lebesgue measure. That is enough. Okay, so this is what we mean by a set of positive rectangle type, and this is the reason behind it. Now let's define this state Boyle's theorem on Rn. So here we assume psi, again a function like this. We also need continuity on psi because we want to, as I told you, with C naught, we have to establish a relation between C psi and C naught, and that's why we need psi to be continuous there. And here we take this integral as usual, and we assume that mu is a complex Borel measure which satisfies the condition same as in Boyle's theorem on R. And we see that if mu hat vanishes on a set of positive rectangle type and the integral is infinite, then mu is 0. Okay, so this kind of theorem could be established, and also the converse is true. If I is finite, then also there exists a non-trivial measure which satisfies this estimate and such that mu hat vanishes on a set of positive rectangle type. Yeah, so this is the result of Boyle's theorem on Rn. So now let me go a little bit into the just idea of what has been used in the proofs. So in case of Ingham, Levinson and Pelley-Wiener, as I've already told you, the first it was done for one case and then it was later generalized for any Q. So actually for any Q, by some convolution techniques, actually you can reduce it to one case and then prove that one case. Okay, so I'll just tell you what was involved. For Ingham's version, remember, for Ingham's version on R, Dane-Jock-Alleman theorem was used on R, which was available on R. Thankfully, a several variable version of Dane-Jock-Alleman was available on Rn, which is due to Bochner-Taylor. And also, so this was used, and also the notion of Radon transform was used to establish a connection between Rn functions on Fourier transform between Rn and R. And so these methods were used for Ingham. For Pelley-Wiener, what was done was everything could be reduced to the one-dimensional case. Okay, the support is in the half space. Using the nature of the Fourier transform, the explicit expression of that, things could be reduced to the one-dimensional case. This was relatively easier. For Levinson's, so WAP, remember we have denoted weighted approximation problem by WAP. So for Levinson, there was a weighted approximation result for open sets, which was generalized, open sets in R, which was generalized to open sets in Rn. There are some standard techniques to do that. So that was generalized in that way, and that was used to prove the Levinson's result on Rn. And for Boiling, the interesting thing happened was, till now we know, as in even in Cousis's book and everything, we know that this weighted approximation result was can be used to prove such uncertainty type results. Okay. For Boiling, what happened? We did not have a weighted approximation result for a set of positive Lebesgue measure, unlike the open set version. So interestingly, this is very interesting to note, is that we could obtain such a result using Boiling's original result on R. So Boiling's original result on R gives us a weighted approximation result for a set of not really a set of positive Lebesgue measure, but a set whose closure is of positive Lebesgue measure. So we could such a weighted approximation result could be proved. And again, this was generalized to Rn for positive rectangle type. This is why we need positive rectangle type for this extension by the standard methods. So we have a weighted approximation result for sets of this type. And this in turn again will give us a Boyling's result, the Boyling's result on Rn that we have already stated. So the interesting point here is that previously we knew that this weighted approximation actually implies this uncertainty type results. Here we could also sort of establish the converse. So it sort of establishes an equivalence between the weighted approximation kind of results and Boyling's result here in this case, so an uncertainty type result. Okay, so this point is very interesting and can be explored further, and this is certainly a point which can be explored further. Okay, so these are the basic ideas of proofs, and let me just give the references here. So Bochner-Taylor's analog, several variable analog of Denjoy-Kleiman theorem is available here. And yeah, the results on Rn for Ingham, Levinson, Pelley-Wiener initially appeared in this paper. This is for the L infinity kind of decay, and the later Q decay, LQ kind of decay is here in this paper. It's an archive. I've given the link. And the Boyling's result is contained here, and this also contains this exponential density result, as I have already mentioned in this paper. This is also in archive now. Okay, so these are the reference to the papers in Rn. So now let me go to, so this is more or less the story on Rn. Now this has been, so this is where it started, and after that it has been also generalized to many other spaces. So I'll talk about them one by one. So first let me start with Pelley-Wiener's theorem. So for Pelley-Wiener's theorem, it was done for two-step nilpotent Lie groups. It is in this paper itself, this initial paper, Bulletin Science Mathematics paper. Now here, it could be done on two-step nilpotent Lie group. This is just by reducing it to the result on Rn. Okay. Then it could also be generalized to any nilpotent Lie group, not only two-step, but for continuous compactly supported functions. This is again in this paper in this, which is an archive, improved Ingham type result, and on connected, simply connected nilpotent Lie groups. Okay. So these are the results on nilpotent Lie groups. As I have already told you, I'm not going into the details or technicalities of this. I'm just mentioning what has been done where. So, and there are some results on Euclidean motion group where again continuous compactly supported functions are considered, and also on semi-simple Lie groups with finite center and arbitrary rank. So here the notion was basically the decay on the Hilbert-Schmidt operator, so looking at the Fourier transform, the Hilbert-Schmidt norm of the Fourier transform. So if you have a decay on that, that gives a decay on the matrix coefficients, and that allows us to use a complex analytic result related to this, and that gives a proof. So after this, actually, it was done in Damac-Ricci spaces for functions supported on one side of a horocycle. Now, remember, Pelley-Wiener's theorem is about functions supported on one side. So one side of a, so in case of R, it's one side of a point, which is a half line. In case of Rn, it's one side of a hyperplane, which is a half space. So here in symmetric spaces, actually, you have an analog of such a thing of a hyperplane is given by horocycle. So you can consider, one can consider functions supported on one side of a horocycle, and then this was proved here for Damac-Ricci spaces. Now the references are here. The here this paper on RNTN and two-step nilpotent, this I've already mentioned. Yeah, the Euclidean motion group and initial semi-simple Lie group result is here, and yeah, this, in this you have this horocycle on one side of a horocycle result on the McRitchie spaces. Okay. So, and yeah, the nilpotent Lie group result is also here. This is mentioned. Yeah. So these are the more or less analogs of Pelley-Wiener's theorem. Now let's go to Ingham. So for Ingham, actually, we also have a version on torus. So remember, torus is compact, we know. So for Ingham, we were assuming functions vanishing on an open set. But for Pelley-Wiener, it was like 1/2. So in torus, we don't know what is a 1/2 of a space. So that was not there. So this is also was in the first paper for torus. So we have Ingham and Levinson on torus, but not Pelley-Wiener. So torus is there. And also in the first paper only, this two-step nilpotent is also there. This is again by reducing it to the result on Rn. And in this semi-simple Lie group first paper, there was a version proved for biK-invariant functions for non-compact complex semi-simple Lie groups. Okay, so this was done by using some explicit form of the spherical functions. But later this was much more generalized by recently. So where what happened was, so Dane-Jock-Alleman, I've already mentioned about Dane-Jock-Alleman theorem. Now Chernoff had proved the L2 version of Dane-Jock-Alleman theorem using iterates of Laplacian. So that could be used, and actually both Ingham's result and Chernoff's result, both of these results could be extended to Riemannian symmetric spaces of non-compact type in general. And also it could be proved that Ingham's theorem actually follows from that of Chernoff's theorem. Okay, so this actually generalized the result in much more in the context of symmetric spaces. So the references are here. This is an initial first semi-simple Lie group paper. This is Chernoff's paper where he proves that version of for quasi-analyticity, and the one in which these results have been extended is here. It is in arXiv, available in arXiv. Okay, so these are the analogs of Ingham's result. Now let's come to the analogs of Levinson's result. So again on torus and two-step, it was done in the first paper, and it has also been done for Riemannian symmetric space of non-compact type recently. And there is also a version of local Levinson theorem for compact symmetric spaces. So here in this Riemannian symmetric spaces of non-compact type, here also a kind of exponential density was used in the proof. Okay, and for this compact symmetric spaces, duality with non-compact symmetric spaces, that concept was used. Okay, but this is only a local kind of a Levinson theorem for functions in a small ball. Okay, so these actually appear in these two papers. So the Levinson's theorem for Riemannian, so this Riemannian symmetric space of non-compact type appear here. It's in IMRN already, I think online, published online. One has the DOI, and local Levinson theorem for compact symmetric spaces, that has also been published in Journal of Lie Theory. So this, as well as now, and yeah, Boylin's theorem, we have an analog on torus. The difference of the proof of this with the this Ingham, Levinson and Pelley-Wiener on torus was that there we could reduce Rn's, reduce the torus proof, so explore the connection of functions on torus with functions on Rn, and reduce it to the Rn proof. But here one had to run the whole exponential density kind of argument and equivalence with that whole argument had to be run for torus. And also there is a version for two-step MW groups. It is not in arXiv yet. And these, yeah, so this for Rn and torus, it appears in this paper, the Boylin's theorem. It's already in arXiv, one can see that. Okay, so lastly, yeah, so these are more or less the analogs of these theorems here. Lastly, let me see if I have few more minutes, I hope. So I'll just mention that there's also a relation with Schrodinger equations. Okay, so the thing is, there's this unique continuation property of solutions to Schrodinger equation one can look at. So one can consider the Schrodinger equation of this form. And so it is known that if say f is in L2, then there exists a unique solution of this of continuous, which is a continuous function on R taking values in L2 in the sense of distribution. And the aim is to obtain some sufficient conditions such that if you know the values of W at t equal to 0 and t equal to t naught, then you'll have that W is 0. So this kind of problem actually can be connected with an uncertainty type of problem that is already known. So this is also a related problem. So in some of these papers, I'm not mentioning this in detail, but in some of these papers that I have already mentioned, these uniqueness properties also studied. And in general, these uniqueness properties have been studied. I'll just give some references in these papers. This Esquariza, Koenig, Pons, Vega, this paper, and Chanillo's paper with respect to complex semisimple Lie groups. Angela Pascal and Sundari had also studied in terms of Riemann symmetric spaces of non-compact type. And Thangvelusser and others, Wenku and others studied this for H-type groups. And this was also done by Ludwig and Müller for two-step nilpotent Lie groups. So here in all of these papers, this relation is studied well. So one can also look at these. Okay, so yeah, I think I have finished. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sen. And I think we can take some questions. We have about 12 or 13 minutes left before the next talk. Organizers, did you get some questions through some channel?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay,
Not
so I think here itself we can allow people, if they want to ask questions, they can unmute and
Yes.
ask questions. So one by one, I don't see any raised hand or anything. So
Okay.
So I have a question. Suparna,
Yes.
this is
Yes.
Gautam.
Hello, sir. Nice
Hello.
to see you.
Good to see you too. Could you just go back to the slide where you were talking about, you mentioned working out the exponential density property for the n-dimensional torus Tn.
Yes.
You just made you said this is not yet in preprint form. You're working.
Oh, this is in preprint form. The torus is in preprint form.
Okay.
Only the two-step one is not.
Okay.
It is in archive.
All right.
Yes. So you just wanted to know about the preprint, or there is?
No. The question was, you said that some aspect of the proof cannot involve reducing to the problem, to the analog of the Berling theorem on Rn. So what exactly is the obstruction? You see, normally one expects things to be simpler for the torus, but you seem to mention an obstruction relating to the exponential density thing. So what is the nature of the obstruction that you actually have to do it ab initio on the n torus?
Actually, the thing is, in these reductions and all, there are some convolution techniques used. Okay. So what happens if a function vanishes on an open set using this convolution technique? So if you convolve with a function which vanishes on which is supported on a very small set, then the resulting convolution, so f star g will then vanish on you can make it such small that f star g will vanish on on another open set. But again, here Boiling type result is for functions vanishing on a set of positive measure. So this convolution technique does not work.
I see. Okay.
That is the obstruction, main obstruction.
I see. Okay.
So one
this is
has to run the initial thing.
So this is an obstacle analogous to how you cannot just use a convolution argument on the classical Ingham result, because what you stated is a little stronger than the Ingham result. And generally one uses a convolution type argument to sort of spread out a support, right?
Right.
But for Berling's theorem, one cannot go from Ingham to Berling in any which way. So
yes,
is this a sort of analogous difficulty?
No. See, Ingham's for Ingham also the function is supported on a or vanishes on a open set. Okay.
Yeah.
So there you can actually use a convolution.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There you can. But you cannot prove an Ingham type result and in any way, shape, or form go to Berling from there. So
yes.
Is this a similar sort of difficulty?
That is difficult. Yeah. Actually, Berling can be thought of as a generalization of Levinson, because the condition, because psi is increasing, that is what is assumed. Right. It is not really a generalization of Ingham because psi is different. Okay. So that is why Berling is sort of considered as a generalization of Levinson. But anyway, the main difference is in Berling we assume, that function vanishing on a set of positive measure, and there this convolution technique does not work. That's a main difficulty here. So for Ingham and Levinson, many times these generalizations are done. This convolution technique is a very important tool used here, which is not applicable for functions vanishing on a positive Lebesgue measure set. That is the problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, sir.
Yeah, we can take a few more questions. We have another 10 minutes, So say if somebody else is willing to ask a question, please raise your hand, and then we can go ahead. I think Professor Ajit Iqbal Singh wants to ask something.
Yes, I listened to a talk by Laura D. Carley on CUNY group of seminars, and she was talking about replacing certain parts of basis by another part, and also there is Curry's work on subsets A, for which the exponentials form a complete system and things like that.
Yes. This is actually a very well studied problem. That is what I mean. There are lots of references. I just gave two such references.
I know.
It is an extremely well studied problem, and there are so many different versions.
Right.
So this is interesting that there is a relation between this uncertainty kind of problem and them. Actually, there is an equivalence. That is what is very interesting.
Right. Yes. So and I'm in touch with Laura D. Carley.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good talk. Very good talk.
Oh, thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Singh. Anybody else? If not, then might be we will end this here. And thank you, Dr. Sen, again for such a wonderful talk.
Actually, I just want to. Sorry.
Sure.
So, are you trying for an analog of Berling's theorem on the semi-simple part?
Can you please introduce
yourself?
Yes,
actually. I think it's I can recognize the voice. I think it's
This is Sundari. Sorry, I'm sorry about it. This is Sundari. Sorry about that.
I recognized your voice anyway.
Please go ahead.
Actually, Berling's theorem is it's only done for Rn and torus, and I said there's just a corollary kind of in two-step. All other thing is wide open. So one should.
But the version, at least the theorem is not so easy. If I'm not.
That is the point. The general.
In the semi-simple part, and so
many
things one has to make sense, and so what is the best definition for which can give the result is going to be troublesome, isn't it?
Right. And this, as you know very well, that this positive measure thing is much difficult to handle than open set. So that creates a problem, and of course one should look at all these spaces. We'll try to look into all these spaces after this. So yeah, whatever versions are there, whatever works and whatever doesn't, so we should look into that. Of course.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else, please? I don't see any raised hands.
Okay.
So we'll stop with this. Thank you, Dr. Sen, again. That's such a nice, wonderful
Okay.
talk.
Okay.